All right, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this live stream. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about critical thinking, what it is and why we should engage in it and how we should engage in it and how it actually can change our life, because this is something that and I'm, it's not hyperbole, it's not just hype. Critical thinking can really change our life. This is a topic that is not discussed a lot in really I haven't heard it discussed at all really within the sphere of I wouldn't say at all, but most of the time it's not discussed within the sphere of personal development. But it really is crucial to personal development. So having been through the entrepreneurship, the world of entrepreneurship, having run multiple businesses, but previous to that, having been so involved in academia. I'm a peer-reviewed. For those of you who are just tuning in for the first time, I'm a peer-reviewed value theorist, researcher in value theory. Peer-reviewed, if you're not familiar with the term, just means that your work has been published in reputable university publishers and all of that good stuff. So basically just giving you my background if you're new to this and you're new to me and my content. So going through how critical thinking can change your life. Well, let's and by the way, let me know where you're coming from if you're as you're tuning in, and if you're on the replay, then let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. So let's understand something. I want to actually before I show you that mess. So I want to actually make a point about critical thinking, that critical thinking, there are many methods to critical thinking. People will say, what's the best method? What is critical thinking? What is critical? It's thinking. How I define critical thinking is actually as an attitude. It's more of an attitude than a method. And critical thinking has to do with analysis, analyzing, and analysis and reflection in order to make informed decisions, better decisions, in order to make better judgments, in order to communicate better. And in order, so you can see how this has to do with personal development very, very directly. And again, it's not mentioned enough. I know people like, Jordan Peterson and, others may talk about critical thinking in the context of personal development a little bit, but not really so much. Not really so much. We're going to talk about, okay, so what is this? All right. So this is the philosophy of science. So in a word, it's a mess. And my point here is that we might ask, right, what are the methodologies to think about reasoning, better reasoning? What are the methodologies? And I'm here to tell you, yes, there are rules to logic, and we'll go through that. There are biases we can discover. There are many approaches to critical thinking. Many approaches. The point here is that in order to understand a little bit about what critical thinking is and how to have better thinking, we have to understand a little bit about the philosophy of science. Now, science, I'm all for scientific reasoning, but science actually has a history, right? It actually comes from the Latin for scientia, meaning knowledge. So back before there was a formal area of science, there used to be a science used to, we're talking medieval times and even after, used to be thought of, especially in the Western world, as a just knowledge, just the pursuit of knowledge. So there wasn't too much of a distinction between science and philosophy. All right. And so so that being said, science actually does have its roots in philosophy. So we have to understand, in order to understand critical thinking, we have to understand where science came from. And this is the rationalists versus the empiricists. So let me take a sip of my coffee here. So there, back in the This is like the 15, 16, 1700s. There were these guys in the Western world known as, and these were the philosophers, some of the most prominent philosophers. There were many others, but these are some of the most prominent philosophers. Descartes arguably was the kind of founder of modern philosophy in the Western world, the Enlightenment philosophy. But there were two schools of thought back in these times, in these centuries. There was the idea of rationalism. Rationalism was, okay, knowledge. How do I get knowledge? How do I gain knowledge? Well, I cannot trust my senses. And Descartes talked about this principally, right? Started out with this idea that I cannot trust my senses because, and he used a lot of examples, right? If you look at, for instance, if you stick a ruler under the water, right? The ruler seems to bend, right? So it's a very simple, rudimentary. I don't think that was his example. I think it was a candle or something was his example. I can't remember, but things like that. The changes we see, right, or the environment can deceive us. Our senses actually can deceive us, and so the only way to understand, to discover knowledge, is through not the senses, but through reason, through logic, right? And Descartes started this project to, I would say, unsuccessfully, I think, to try to deduce logic from, the whole world of reality, all the truths of reality from first principles of logic, axioms. Descartes was famous for his geometry as well, and so you see this in his this method all throughout his work, right? Starting with first principles, irrefutable principles, and then basically building reality from that, building truths about reality from that. And famously, he stated, his famous line was, "I think, therefore I am." All right, I think, therefore I am. So this was because if you're thinking, right, you cannot doubt that you're thinking. You cannot doubt if you're doubting. Even you're doubting, the action of doubting implies that you exist, right? So actually, there are some very interesting arguments about personal identity that I've heard that are counter arguments to that, but we will get into another day. And of course, my dog is bothering me. I don't know if you guys on the live stream can see my dog, but yeah, anyway, that's her. Anyway, she has some amazing insights too that she always shares with me, but she's a poodle. Yes. Are you bothering me during the live stream? Okay. Well, anyway, so on the right side here, we have empiricists. So the empiricists believed the direct opposite. They said all knowledge only comes from experience. Knowledge only comes from experience. Knowledge does not come from first principles or just logic. There's nothing we can get from that. So one of the most famous ones was John Locke here. John Locke. Berkeley had some radical kind of views, kind of a radical kind of empiricism, but Hume had an approach of skepticism, right? Skepticism with respect to empiricism. So anyway, there are a lot of approaches to critical thinking. So that's why so what am I trying to say here? Why am I laying this out? Because many people ask us, okay, or tell us, be rational, or be a better thinker. And there are, as we'll see, logical rules, there are mental models, there are all sorts of approaches, and there are fixed logical rules. But being a better thinker, it's a question. Who has the last word on what it means to be a better thinker? Was Descartes a better thinker than Hume? Was Berkeley here a better thinker than Leibniz, right? Well, so along came Immanuel Kant, and Immanuel Kant was revolutionary because he said, you guys are both wrong. You guys are both wrong, and you guys are both right in a way. His work kind of bridged the gap between rationalism and empiricism. He said, you cannot. There are things. Essentially, I'm kind of abridging his argument here, but there are things that we can know from experience. There is some sort of pathway of knowledge that comes from experience, and there's a structure. We have a structure of the mind that allows us to that enables us, what he would call transcendentally, or what you'd call foundationally, to perceive the world in a certain way. We perceive the world. The world is a certain way because, boiling it down, I want to watch my words here. The world is a certain way, he would say, because of the structure of the mind. The structure of the mind is reflected in the world, right? So basically, his work. What was the importance of his work? His work, you almost never hear his name nowadays. It's so funny. You don't hear a lot of his name, but he influenced psychology, neuroscience, a lot of fields that in the social sciences, because if you, for instance, you could probably even trace back this whole nature versus nurture argument back to Kant, because what's important? Do we have an innate structure of the mind that creates reality, creates our behavior, or do we have, or is it just all outside influencing the mind? Well, now we know that it just as Kant said, it's a little bit of everything, right? It's quite a complex picture. So, and then along came, these thinkers, right? We have Nietzsche, who destroyed all of them, right? We have Derrida, postmodernism, to me, kind of crazy stuff to think about. And, Jean-Paul Sartre, you have one of the fathers of existentialism, right? So many different ways of thinking. Again, who is the best critical thinker? Who is the best thinker? You might even argue, okay, just the scientific thinkers, right? Just the scientific thinkers. But let's understand something. Science and philosophy are two different things, all right? Science and philosophy really are two different things. And you can respect science and understand the scientific method, while at the same time understanding that there are boundaries between the scientific method or science and what philosophy does. So let's understand, what are all these thinkers doing, right? Whenever they're coming up with these positions, these philosophies, what are they doing? They're challenging previous assumptions. They're building on previous assumptions. They're challenging previous assumptions. So there's a clue here. There's a clue in what good critical thinking is, because the evolution of thought throughout time has been to critique, and that's the critical part of critical thinking. It's not being negative. Oh, you're wrong, right? That's not what we mean by critical thinking. Critical thinking is more reflection and questioning. Well, everybody assumes that this is right, but what if we see this from a little bit of a different perspective, right? So yes, again, many methodologies for critical thinking, many systems for critical thinking. There's definitely, logic, formal logic, and all that stuff for critical thinking. But at the end of the day, this is what I'm getting at here, is critical thinking is more of an attitude, right? Because it requires developing that kind of attitude of being willing, being brave enough in many cases to question other people's assumptions, previous assumptions, see something from a different perspective, and question our own assumptions, right? So yes, that is a big part of critical thinking, right? And as I said, there are many hacks for critical thinking. What is the best approach for critical thinking, right? Well, I'll just bring this back up. We can avoid cognitive biases. So there are many books that have been written. There's a lot of research in psychology that has been written on cognitive biases, right? For instance, what's a confirmation bias? Hey, Coder, welcome. Welcome to the live stream. Happy to have you. Where are you tuning in from? So yeah, feel free to type that in the chat. So yeah, there are many hacks, right? avoiding cognitive biases. Confirmation bias is one. Confirmation bias is essentially assuming something before you have and basing your premises on that thing, on that fact, on that supposed fact, before and basing all of your actions on that, right? Basing all of your decisions on that. Obviously, that's very. So, for instance, if you assume, for instance, that thank you, awesome, welcome from India. And thank you. I love the books that I recommend, so I'm glad you enjoy them too. Yeah, there are so confirmation bias. For instance, if you assume some people of a certain race, right, always do this thing, right? That's a one obvious form of confirmation bias. And now you're going to always if you assume that is true from the get-go, you're always going to see people of that race. You're always going to observe that people doing that thing because you have kind of chosen to focus on that, right? So that's one example, right? One reason why, just for instance, racism on its head is just purely illogical, right? And then falsification and verification. So falsification is a great approach to critical thinking, meaning in order to prove something, the approach that science takes is not trying to verify something. In science, you don't start with, you start with an observation, right? This is how science works. You start with an observation, and then you form a hypothesis. You think, hey, you take a good guess. That's what a hypothesis is. It's just a good guess. That's it. It's like an educated guess. I think that this thing might be true. What do? You don't look for ways to confirm it. That's a form of confirmation bias. What we do instead is we try to poke holes in it. We perform tests, and the purpose of experiments is really to prove the hypothesis wrong. That's the whole purpose of experiments. And this is a great way of thinking as well. Scientific thinking is a great way of thinking as well. This can be taken to the extreme, so we do need some balance in this in our lives, but it's a good way to challenge our own assumptions. If we think something is true, try to prove it wrong. And this is why people get wrapped up in conspiracy theories too. A lot of crazy conspiracy theories, because what they're doing is they're looking for things that confirm what they think are true. Instead, their approach should be, okay, maybe some conspiracy. There are conspiracies that happen in the world. I mean, it happens. So what you should do is you should actively look for facts that contradict your belief. And if you consistently find enough facts that contradict the belief, then it's probably not correct. But yeah, if you are consistently trying to prove it wrong, look for facts that contradict that belief, then yeah, maybe there is some sort of conspiracy. I mean, for instance, there are politicians who take bribes and things like that. That happens. So but in that case, you're looking for facts that prove it wrong, right? It's a little bit of the idea of what the legal system works on, right? So understanding logical rules. Now, in order to be a better critical thinker, it's important to understand basic logical rules. Rules of universalization. So, for instance, you can't go from, let's see. Well, I have a dog here. This dog is very cute, right? So if I say, oh, this dog is very cute, you might, and I see maybe lots of dogs, and I see another dog that's very cute, I can't just conclude that all dogs are cute, right? Can't say that. Right. So that would be a basic one, but I really encourage you, pick up a book on logic. There are some great books on there. You guys can watch my videos. If you're watching from TikTok, you can watch my videos on YouTube. about some of these logical approaches to logic and critical thinking. There's some great things great ways of avoiding biases. I may do a whole video on this again, just running through different biases and logical rules another time. But mental models. So, for instance, Occam's razor. This is a great way to be a better critical thinker. What is Occam's razor? There are many what we call mental models. Mental models are just shortcuts. They're just basic, 1, 2, 3 principles, bullet points, basic things that we can always go to in a pinch, right? That are usually derived from something a little bit more complicated that wouldn't be practical. But for instance, this mental model, Occam's razor. So what is Occam's razor? Occam's razor means do not, William of Occam, in medieval philosopher, but he stated, do not multiply entities beyond necessity. What does that mean? Do not multiply entities beyond necessity. So if you can explain something with if there is an adequate explanation for what we observe or something that happened in the world, and the explanation can be explained by some one thing, we shouldn't therefore introduce more things to explain it. Again, an easy example is conspiracy theories, right? There are many examples of ways to reason through to use Occam's razor, but conspiracy theories are a great example because a conspiracy theory adds entities, multiplies entities. Yeah, right. So yes, correct. Correct, Coder. If you have two, or Bhuvan, right? If you have two competing ideas to explain the same phenomenon, you should prefer the simpler one. Yeah, there are many actually interpretations of this. Yes, one interpretation of this is that it's the simplest idea, although the reason that is potentially problematic is because it's actually harder than you think to define what's simple. So I actually do prefer the other interpretation, the other interpretation of Occam's razor, which is directly from his quote, do not multiply entities beyond necessity. Again, meaning if we have the explanation for some corruption that we see, let's say, or some world event, right? There's some world event, major world event, and we can explain it by, let's say this country had some let's say inflationary out of control inflation, and then at the same time it had some social unrest and whatever. There were these factors that usually explain those things. Then we shouldn't multiply entities beyond necessity and simply assume that, okay, yes, there's this secret group of people that actually controlled the event and made the people act that certain way and caused the hyperinflation or whatever, right? So that's another example. There are many ways to check ourselves with these mental models. There are lots of great mental models out there. You should just Google mental models, right? And you'll see a lot of these types of things out there. So, so even though there are many hacks that we just went through, and I know more people are joining us, so go back and watch the replay. You did miss quite a lot of good stuff from that we just discussed earlier. But at the end of the day, critical thinking, this is what I believe. This is why I believe that critical thinking is more of an attitude. It's more of an attitude than a hack or an approach. Because at the end of the day, what do all of these approaches have in common? We can use all of these different approaches for critical thinking, but what do they all have in common? It's embracing uncertainty, right? It's the willingness to embrace uncertainty. And as human beings, that's actually very psychologically difficult for us to do. The reason we're attracted to ideologies and ideas that are fixed and We're attracted to the idea of I have to be right, you have to be wrong. The reason we get attracted to, join, groups that get very polarized. So I'm in this group, you're in that group, we hate each other. The reason that is very attractive is because it gives us a sense of certainty. If there's nothing left to learn, right? Or if we don't have uncertainty, then there's nothing left to learn, right? We can be all right. We don't have to think anymore. It's kind of bliss, right? We feel at ease, right? Everything is right with the world. But embracing uncertainty requires requires a lot of courage. But if we can do this, we get so much more than just the blissful happiness, so to speak, that people who don't do this get. I believe we get, at the end of the day, a higher degree of self-fulfillment by embracing uncertainty. Because embracing uncertainty, it sounds scary, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be this feeling. I don't know what's going to happen. It's just openness. It's openness. It's the idea of thinking, okay, yeah, I think I have the right idea. I think I have the right idea, but I might be wrong, and I'm probably wrong about some part of this idea. And that is wonderful, because what it does is, we talk about personal growth. Critical thinking leads to personal growth, because that attitude automatically opens us up to understanding that if we don't have all the answers, if I might be wrong, and I probably am wrong, what do I need to do? I need to listen to other people's perspectives. I need to take into consideration other facts. I need to challenge myself, right? I need to challenge myself on a regular basis. Look, we go to the gym for exercise. I just came back from the gym, right? That's why I set these live streams to 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time instead of 10, because I get back a little later. But we train ourselves at the gym. Why don't we train our brain, right? Being the best version of ourselves. And, Aristotle, this goes back to Aristotle. This goes back to many philosophers, Eastern and Western philosophers alike. Part of being better and better and better every day is not just about being, richer, right? Yes, being rich, having money is important, right? For our dreams. But it's also about being healthier. It's also about daily being wiser, being a better critical thinker, growing our mind, right? So we should be growing all areas of our life. And that's really how we can live what I believe is a good life, the best life possible. So, so that is it for today. But if you want to work with me directly, guys, feel free to check out my Life Navigator system. I will actually put in the chat a link to this in the chat, so you can check it out. And if you're watching on the replay, you could see this in the link in the pinned comment and the description. But there are 3 phases to this program if you're interested to check it out. One is Telos Discovery, where we help you put together a customized personal development plan, and totally customized to you. There's a formal questionnaire and really deep inquiry that we do to get this right. Set up a 12-week plan for you. Phase 2 is Skill Mastery, where we customize a curriculum and a study plan for skills you'll need, skills you may lack, or skills you need to build on the way to your goal, to your personal, whatever that is, career goal, personal goals, relationship goals, whatever that is, leadership goals. So, and then 3 is project completion. This is about strategically connecting you to people and resources that you may need, that you probably will need along your journey. And so this program incorporates all of this. If you want to figure out whether this is right for you and just don't know, and that question is in your mind, you can check out this link that I'm putting in the in here in the chat. And that's just to book a 30-minute free 30-minute call. And if we'll put together a plan a personal development plan for you on that call. And if you love how the plan works, if you like the structure of the plan, then great. You can choose to do the program, but you can choose not to. And if not, all good. You'll still have a very solid plan to run on and use from there on out. So I really appreciate you guys for jumping on today. I really appreciate spending time with you. I love to hear from you. So let me know how you're doing. Let me know how this helped you. Let me know your thoughts, your ideas, your perspectives, because that's how we all grow together. And thank you guys. Have a great rest of your day. Go out and do something great for yourself and for the world today. So see you soon.